go. All right, I hope I'm good here with my levels finally. What's up, y'all? Are we good? Are we good? Can you hear me? All right, what's up, y'all? This should be good. All right, yes. Okay, so yeah, thanks for sticking around. Long intro. Somebody's gonna have to time stamp that later for me. Yo, what's up? Long time no see. I feel like tonight we are doing a special. This will be fun. This will be a fun stream, y'all. Yeah. Had so much to do here, y'all. Thankfully we got a nice new setup here, y'all. Let me know. Let me know if this is if my levels are good. If I'm good, we're loud and clear. Says Jeff. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Yep, trying to get used to it all, y'all. So tonight, yes, there we go. So tonight we are doing. Hold on. There we go. Boomer teching it. All right, so tonight we're doing a big lyric stream, y'all. We're gonna have fun tonight. This is our music analysis stream, part 4. We will be doing mainly. We're gonna talk about the film, the fun film. Yes, it's a musical, but it's a fun musical that is kind of a take on itself. It's really a satire of itself, even though it does have revelatory elements, and that is the 2012 film Rock of Ages, starring our favorite Tom Coombe. It's got a great cast. There's a lot to talk about. It is a kind of a satire slash pseudo pseudo history of 1980s, specifically 1987 LA, especially the Whiskey A Go Go. They call it the bourbon in the film, but we're going to talk about that, 80s bands, lyrics, and let's see, we're going to be going into, Def Leppard, White Snake, let's see, a little bit of Guns N' Roses, what else? Various 80s Poison, Every Rose Has Its Thorn, various songs that are used in the film. And of course, in the film is great because they're actually sung by Tom Coombe and various cast members. Julianne Hough. The movie was made at the time when Julianne Hough, that dancer, actress, sort of triple threat, as they call it in the acting world, was big in whatever those reality shows were. Not reality shows, but sort of game shows in the 2010s and all that. So it's kind of a vehicle for her, but we're not going to get too much into that aspect of it. Really, we're going to be talking about Tom Coombe's character, Stacey Jacks, in the film's pretty good. And of course, he is, if you have your signed copy of JD's ESO Hollywood, you will see that right there is Tom Coombe from the film Rock of Ages, playing Stacey Jacks. And this is interesting because there's so much Luminate confirm in this film that it's part of it is obviously, it's a send up, it's a joke, but there are also elements that are pretty revelatory elements that we can talk about in a kind of seriousness, I guess. And we'll be analyzing the lyrics to various big lyrics, big anthems of the 80s, especially the pre-grunge, late 80s, not glam rock, but, the big pop rock songs. And talking about how those lyrics convey a message, a worldview, especially an American worldview at the time, what they mean, what if there is a message, what the message is. Cheers, y'all. We got the old Red Bull out on a weekday night, doing some big music tonight. We're gonna be talking about. Let's get this going, y'all. Let's go. We're gonna be talking about, of course, Poison, a little bit of Skid Row, a little bit of Whitesnake, a little bit of GNFNR, and some various poppy, less rocky songs that are used as in the film. They kind of push the narrative and the story forward. And if you've seen the film, look, we're not doing a movie review, and I'm not here to recommend movies, but I would say that especially if you are not really a fan of musicals, and we're going to talk a little bit about what a musical is, what it serves, why it exists in the first place, especially from the viewpoint of a former actor who was trained in partly in musicals. We're going to talk about what they mean, what they do, why they exist, why I personally am not really we don't have to talk about why I'm not really a big fan of them. But this one's different because it's fun and it uses actual rock music as its vehicle, and everyone can sort of relate to it, especially those who were alive at the time. And there's a lot of humor in the film. And of course, this isn't a movie analysis channel. We leave that up to our based homeboys over there at, for instance, Jay's Analysis. Jay is the king of movie analyses, and our other various friends. But we are going to try and tie this into the literary element of music lyrics. We've, of course, talked about in the other three streams in the music lyrics analysis streams in our kind of, our kind of tangent set here. We did Led Zeppelin, of course. We did the Smiths. We did Metallica's One. And we talked about music lyrics as literature and what that means and why it's kind of a misnomer. Of course, we also mentioned, I think in the first one, that one of the reasons we did this in the first place is because I was talking about how Bob Dylan had won the Globus Nobel Prize for Literature. And, what that means, we don't have to go back into that. But trying to differentiate, for instance, poetry from music lyrics. And, of course, no one is claiming that pop music lyrics are poetry. They certainly have a poetic element. And, of course, the great music lyrics and the popular music lyrics, as we'll see when we look at some of these lyrics, we'll see that they have to have a grounding in meaning and form and content in order to work. And I think you'll be surprised by the fact that some of them are a little bit, I don't want to say deeper, but more multi-level than you may remember. Especially John Bovey's Wanted Dead or Alive. We're going to talk about that one kind of in depth. And Whitesnake's Here I Go Again, and Poison's Every Rose Has Its Thorn. There are certain elements to those three songs specifically that I think you may be surprised to find that they are a little bit more, I don't know if sophisticated or intelligent is the word, but we can glean a little bit more out of those than simply, an earworm of a song. But of course, for those songs to work, they have to be grounded or accompanied rather by a certain sound and a full perfect in their element musical accompaniment. And I also have, I think, not a lot to say, but I have a little bit of a different take on the composition of these lyrics, because inevitably, when you go researching them, you'll find that there's a behind the music. There's a story about every set of popular bands, their popular music. But if you've seen, for instance, the movie Under the Silver Lake, which was covered by, of course, beautiful Tristana and JD over at Jay's Analysis, and I think who was talking about that recently? Jerry, our homeboy Jerry over at Exposing Powerful Lies, and Kuski at the Real Cooter Brown, Maddie. Digital Minefield, our homeboy Digital Minefield. They were talking recently about Under the Silver Lake and some of the esoteric elements of the film. And remember, of course, that spoiler alert for that film, we find that near the climax of the movie that the songwriters especially for the history of pop music going way back have been a specific group of people, and they're essentially just ghostwritten. Now, this is fact, and we know that's fact for a lot of popular music. For instance, we've covered Elvis here. It was a popular stream. We've covered Elvis in my Hurt. It's called Hurt Analysis, where I looked at Nick Garelnick's book, Careless Love, and of course Elvis. Still to this day, a lot of people think that they come across that Elvis didn't write his own music. Well, it's not a shocker. Elvis was a performer, and he was a singer, a musician, and a performer, but he never claimed to be a songwriter. In fact, that was the thing beginning in the 50s, that you had a whole industry set up around these performers. And it's not just the way that they looked. It was the way that they performed, their charisma, their stage presence, their ability to draw a crowd. And they pulled songs from other popular songwriters who they themselves performed, but Elvis, especially in his latter years, in his Felvis stages, in his Fat Elvis stages, would simply sing, gospel, or he would be handed. There's a part in the book where it talks about Colonel Parker would just hand him basically a binder and would say, pick a couple songs out of this, and then I and the producers will determine your repertoire. We'll have the final say. Who was it? Also, recently, someone said, I watched an interview with Quincy Jones, the great Quincy Jones. The probably the top of the Hollywood producer food chain, especially, in the 70s and 80s. And Quincy Jones, he was talking about Jacko and Thriller. And he basically said in the interview, he said, yes, he performs the songs, he sings the songs, but he doesn't pick the songs. You'd be crazy if you're a producer or you have a label to let the artist have any sort of choice when it comes to, picking songs for an album. That's insane. I found that pretty interesting. So that being said, I have a kind of a, maybe it's a hot take about some of these songs, but especially this occurred to me when I was reading about the backstory to Poison's Every Rose Has Its Thorn. And the story of the composition is kind of so ridiculous to me that I don't know if it's truthful or not. I mean, it very well could be, but it seemed to me like a cover. It seemed to me that this is a song that, the label or whomever had the band play and perform and record, and they were given a story for this, because the story is essentially that Bret Michaels called his dancer girlfriend, who he heard another voice in the background, and he was like, yeah, as a rock star, that always happened to it. It did? I didn't know that. And he was saddened and jealous. And he went, it said that it was 3 a.m. and they were on the road. He took his guitar into a hotel laundry room, and used that as kind of a metronome, and then just came up with the lyrics to the song, and then went in and played it for the fellas. And I just found this, look, maybe that is absolutely true, and I'm sure that does, of course, that happens with bands, but something doesn't strike me, it doesn't feel right with that song, and the reason I say that is because it's so unlike their Poison's other songs, and it's their only number one hit, and so it's a little bit strange. So that being said, I know I've been rambling with this. Y'all like the Iceman hat? Look, shouts out to Kang Jerry out there, the Ewok Kang, Exposing Powerful Lies live streams. He is our homeboy, and if anybody is the true Iceman, Jerry, our friend Jerry, is the Iceman. And love you out there, homeboy. So let's talk about the 2012 film Rock of Ages. Now, you can stream this, you can watch it, and it's interesting because I thought of it actually because I was thinking of ESO Hollywood up there, and I remembered the cover to the book, and then I was just reading about old Tom Coombe, and then I remembered that he had done some, one thing to be said about Tom Coombe is that, if anybody is a movie star in the truest sense, I mean, this guy, I'm not talking about his acting ability. I'm just talking about his ability to pick roles sometimes that I think are sort of against type. And, that, of course, there's a lot that can be said for that, of course, dealing with the motivations for that, the powers that be, and culture creation. But I think that this one is an interesting one because it is so against type for Tom Coombe. And I mean, of course, he went from he was in the 80s and he did, he did Risky Business, and then Ridley Scott, legend. And then we talked about Top Gun. And then, of course, he did Ron Kovic in Born on the 4th of July, which is totally a pretty challenging, I think, story to do. And then, of course, okay, for instance, when he did the Magnolia film, you guys remember Magnolia? Was it Paul Thomas Anderson, where he plays essentially the guru, con man, motivational speaker. That's an interesting role. He did the comedic role in Tropic Thunder, all that stuff. But this one is totally different because it's it's risky. It's risky. If you've seen this movie, it's a risky role to take because of the what is said in the in everyday talk and of course in the tabloids about his personal life. Now, so it's a bit risky. Of course, it's also slightly risque. Now it's satirical, especially considering his costumes in the movie. So what happens in the movie is basically we get a Journey lyrics, small town girl, or a Guns N' Roses, One in a Million, small town person from, of course, Guns N' Roses, Indiana, and in this it's Oklahoma, gets on the American Greyhound bus and goes straight out to California, the land of fame and promise, with basically nothing. And so that's kind of the trope in the movie. And that is Julianne Hough. She gets on the bus, and of course, it's interesting because she's on the bus, and everybody the bus essentially serves as the chorus. It's kind of like a Greek chorus. She gets to Hollywood right at sunset, and immediately pretty much walks into this place called the Bourbon. And the Bourbon is obviously a take on the Whiskey A Go-Go in LA. Now, I don't know these places personally. I only know them through music and lore and books and stuff. And some of the best writing about LA and the Rainbow Room and the Whiskey A Go-Go is in No One Here Gets Out Alive, the Jerry Hopkins book about Jim Morrison, and the Anthony Kiedis autobiography, Scar Tissue. So in Scar Tissue, Kiedis talks about how when he was a kid, his dad, whose name is, what's his dad's name? Blackie Dammit, I think. He was essentially a dealer to the stars. And he would hang out at the Rainbow Bar and Grill and at the Whiskey at a table with famous clientele like Jimmy Page and Zeppelin and all these people. And how he would bring along, young Anthony Kiedis with him. And that sort of goes into, that is sort of a different era of LA that sort of degrades into the 80s scene where the movie takes place. And the conflict in the movie arises when we see that there's a guy running for mayor of LA, and he's essentially going to clean up the city. Because he says it's filth, and the lyrics are it's evil music and trash and all that sort of stuff. He's actually also not wrong in many aspects, but his wife is the driving force of the conflict, and his wife is played by Katarina Zeta-Jones. And did you know that Catherine Zeta-Jones, by the way, whom is great in this movie. She can dance and she can sing. Catherine Zeta-Jones is, a lot of people think that, she's Hispanic or from, I don't know, South America. Catherine Zeta-Jones is a Welsh lady. And it's not a double-barreled last name, Zeta-Jones. It's just, that's her middle name. Anyway, she is the, which character is she, guys? Is it Tipper Gore? Who was the one who was the driving force behind the parental advisory logos on tapes and CDs? Chath, help me out. Was that Tipper Gore, Al Gore's wife, or Tip O'Neill? I can't remember, but anyway, that is pretty much her character. She dresses in very conservative sort of country club, 80s pink wife of a politician clothes. But you can tell that she is obviously has a secret, degenerate side where she's obviously in love with Tom Coombs' character. The mayor character is played by, thank you. The mayor character is played by the excellent Bryan Cranston, who, one thing I'll say about his acting is that obviously, who doesn't like Bryan Cranston, right? Who doesn't like Heisenberg? And it's interesting that the movie was made at the very tail end of the 5-year reign of Breaking Bad. But he is, he plays like the straight man, but he's also, he's a politician, so he obviously has some creepy vices. But he plays it with kind of, with a sort of, he he's funny. He's, he knows that the role that he's playing is a send up and that it's funny. But what I'll say about his role, and that the movie kind of verges on this at times, is that I heard this once I'll give you guys a little inside lesson in, especially in English drama. One thing is that, yeah, you're an anti-dentite. He was great in Seinfeld. Is that if you're playing comedy, the best, we've talked about why it's so hard to make a comedy. And there are so few like great comedies, especially that are put out every year compared to dramas and, horror movies and all that stuff. It's so hard to make a comedy because one thing is the actors and the people producing the film, they have a tendency to like laugh at their own jokes. Now that's okay in a sense, but the best, if you notice, like the best comedies are played by actors, by characters who believe what they're saying in the role. They take who they are seriously because they're living in this world. So for instance, Strangelove, Dr. Strangelove has a couple of times where like, George C. Scott is obviously, he's a bombastic, like satirical character, but that's because his character is also a serious character who's also like not serious. Does that make sense? It's within the realm of the character. On the other hand, all the other characters in the film are the reason they're funny is because they are straight characters and the situation and what they're saying is funny. And in this movie, one of the drawbacks is that Cranston, at times, and some of the other actors like can kind of verge on that. And I don't know, that's like a pretty specific critique. But the reason I bring that up is because I read an interview with Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin, of course, is in this film, and he plays the sort of broke club owner of the Whiskey A Go-Go. And he said that he hated the movie, he hated being in the movie, and he thought it was total shit. Well, the problem is that he is not good in the movie, and he's not funny, and he doesn't take it seriously. And that may sound, to you guys like, well, yeah, obviously he's not funny. But remember, like, Alec Baldwin, for all the stuff he is and all that stuff we don't like, is like, he is funny in movies where he plays a comedic role, not his like shitty TV shows and all that, all that stuff. But like, for instance, what's that movie with Ben Stiller and Brian Brown and Philip Seymour Hoffman, that great movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman. Anyway, the character that Baldwin plays in that is like it's really good. He plays a character and a straight character, and he's funny. But in this, it's like he obviously is in the film because he wanted to be in it with Tom Cruise. Now, Tom Cruise, on the other hand, is like masterful in this movie. He's so good because he is the perfect satire of the 80s rock star. Everything he does in it, his movements, what he says, is so ridiculous. And there are many, like I said, there are a bunch of revelatory elements in this. Okay, so for instance, when she gets to the club and she meets the club owners and the manager, one of them, the manager is Russell Brand. And it's interesting that Brand and Baldwin are in a movie together. Of course, this is pre, all the stuff that's happened recently or whatever you can say about those guys. But they ask, where's Stacey Jacks? Stacey Jacks is Tom Cruise. And they say, oh, he's off. They literally say in the film, like, he's off worshiping Satan, or he was injured in a satanic ritual. And they it's supposed to be outlandish and funny in the film, but it's also, to us, it's like, okay, this is supposed to be a parody of the rock stars, but they really did do this stuff in the 80s. And remember the Zeppelin stream. And it's not funny in the sense that that Catherine Zeta-Jones's character is supposed to be this righteous character who obviously is, puritanical and goes too far. However, her basic criticism of culture is correct in the movie in the sense that it's not necessarily like the pop music or the specific lyrics of a Poison song or whatever that are going to degrade culture at large, but it is the thing that's the driving force behind it. She's actually correct in that. And of course, The other criticism is that it's not the it's she plays the wife of the politician, and it's not the politician that's gonna save any of this, and that is set up in the film, which is actually pretty well done because they are as or more degenerate than the rock stars are. And anyway, so she dreams of being a singer, and when she first meets Tom Coombe, they go backstage, and he is a combination of his character is a combination of Jim Morrison and Axl Rose. I think I read that he specifically modeled himself on those two characters, and it's very, I mean, it is true in the film. He's got all of the sort of the walk of Jim in the movie, like he's walking on a tightrope, and all of the interests of Axl. And you notice when you first see him that he's asleep in a bed with three women, kind of like the Weird Sisters, just like in Dracula. And he gets up and he's got it's pretty embarrassing. And this was the dangerous part. He gets up and he's got these assless chaps on with a cod piece of the devil's face, sticking a tongue out. And yes, it's funny and it's ridiculous and bombastic, but it's also there's a part of you that's okay, this is also disturbing because the truth of it is that this is a thing, right? But then what happens is he talks to, let's see, his manager is played by Paul Giamatti, who's great, and I think his character is obviously supposed to be I don't know, what's the guy's name? Who's the guy who owned Warner Brothers and he's in Wayne's World? Tommy, is it Tommy Mottola? Is that it? And he's basically just, another scumbag LA manager, totally bald, but with this weird, sort of donut headed ponytail. And I'm hip. And, he makes sure he gets every cent. And anyway, he brings in a Rolling Stone journalist, and the Rolling Stone journalist is played by, what's her name? Malin Ackerman, who, glasses, she's beautiful, but she's a Rolling Stone journalist. She comes in, she does a basic criticism of, 80s music, and he threatens, he's like, no, we're going to get her out of here. I can make one phone call to your boss, Jan Winter. Of course, we know that Jan Winter, especially from, I think, McGowan. Didn't McGowan talk about Jan Winter, how he was an asset, right? Certainly part of the culture creation machine. But anyway, Tom Coombe says, no, y'all get out of here, including my bodyguards, one of whom is played by Kevin Nash. Get out of here, ladies, Tom Coombe. And he lets her interview him, and they sing, what do they sing together? They sing a Def Leppard song, and then they sing I Want to Know What Love Is, the song I Want to Know What Love Is, which is interesting because when he first meets Paul Giamatti, he knows him, he's his manager, but when he first sees him, Giamatti comes in and he says something interesting. He says, he puts his arm around him and he's got these shades and a fur, a fur coat, no shirt. And he says, he says, you and I are soul survivors. Even the cockroaches had their faces scorched by the aftermath. And I thought that was really a wild thing for him. An incredible couple of lines for him to utter, but totally in line with his sort of Jim Morrison-esque character. And the thing I'll say about that is that it's obvious that Justin Theroux wrote the dialogue for Stacey Jacks. Justin Theroux is from Shouts Out VA. You remember Justin Theroux and the whatever fake Jen Aniston, all that bullshit. But I always liked Justin Theroux because he was in Mulholland Drive. Shouts out again to JD for his Mulholland Drive analysis. Shouts out to hello Coop. And he wrote some of the dialogue for Zoolander, which is actually also more Luminate confirmed than you may remember. Anyway, he obviously wrote the dialogue for that. And basically the journalist is like, look, everything you do is fake and you're brokenhearted and you have no soul, and that's why you are a, basically a money grubbing whore and your music is plastic and fake. And she's right in many ways, except for she works for the same mouthpiece industry that that is part of this whole system. But anyway, what happens is he listens to her, and he sort of kind of goes on as much of a soul search, I suppose, as one can in a movie like this. He also has a pet monkey a la Jacko, and it's called, what's he called? Hey Dude or Hey Man or something. It's kind of funny. There's also a subplot of the, like, loser bartender at the bourbon who also wants to be a star. This is the exact same as this is the exact same plot in a sense as the movie 54. You guys seen that? The movie 54 about Steve Rubell, Studio 54, which, by the way, as a tangent, I will say that was one movie where the best, let's see, who was it? Mike Myers. Mike Myers was nominated for Best Supporting Actor at the, whatever, Oscars for the movie 54 and should have won. He's great in that movie. Anyway, so it's basically the same plot, the same subplot as that. And just quickly, what ends up happening is Stacey Jacks goes on stage, but he breaks a glass and he, what's her name? Julianne Hough helps him clean it up. She's a bartender or a waitress. The loser guy who's interested in her sees her helping him and thinks they've slept together, and he runs off like a dork. And quits his whole life because he saw one thing and he was mistaken. She, forget what happens to her, but she leaves. She leaves and basically walks into the rain singing, gets taken in by Mary J. Blige. Mary J. Blige works at an exotic club and hires her. So now she's like sort of going down and out the barrel of Hollywood. Meanwhile, the loser guy gets his band. They open for Stacey Jacks. They sing I Wanna Rock, and Paul Giamatti thinks they're amazing. Paul Giamatti, I kind of thought Paul Giamatti was supposed to be playing, what's his name? Jonah, maybe like Jonah Hill's real life dad. Did you know that Jonah Hill, the actor Jonah Hill, his dad was the accountant? I don't know if he was a tour manager, but he was the accountant for like Guns N' Roses and a bunch of 80s bands, which is weird. Anyway, so he gets signed. You know that when he signs his record deal, he's basically signing, selling his soul. He signs his record deal and then immediately has to transform his whole image. He's no longer a rocker and becomes a boy band guy. The boy band is called, like, I don't know, Boys 12 or Crazy or something like that. Everybody hates them because they're super cool in 1987. And then he works it out with Julianne Hough. They get back together, and that's it. That's the end of the movie. There's also a scene where Tom Cruise says to Paul Giamatti, "I'll play this concert for you, but after it's over, we have to come back in here and burn this club to the ground." And he's like, you mean metaphorically speaking? And he's like, "No, literally, we need to burn the club to the ground." Of course, I'm joking, but I'm not. And I thought that was they obviously got that from Jim Morrison's. What did Jim Morrison say? It's the same thing that he said that Matthew McConaughey took his all right from. It's The Doors Live. He says, "I don't know what's going to happen, man, but I'm going to get my kicks before this whole shithouse goes up in flames." All right, that's what he says. And that was obviously taken from that, but it's also because the character Stacey Jacks has been through the fame cycle and sees that it is soulless and engineered and worthless, and thinks that they ought to have a conflagration and set the entire thing on fire because it's, he's essentially sacrificed himself to this entire system. So that's the movie Rock of Ages. Now, should we talk about some of the lyrics in some of these songs? Especially the fact that the movie is called Rock of Ages, right? It has a religious allegory / hymn-esque title. And so what can we say about that? All right, so give me a second here because I got to refill my Red Bull, and don't go anywhere because I also got to get my lyric notes that I left right in the other room. So give me 1 second, and I will be right back. All right, we're back. Sorry, y'all, had to refill my drink here, and I could not find all my notes, but I found them now. So let's go. Here we go. All right, so everybody have a good break. So, so we're gonna talk for a minute about. Let's see. I want to know what love is. Poison's Every Rose Has Its Thorn. Def Leppard's Pour Some Sugar on Me. Bon Jovi's Wanted Dead or Alive. These are songs within the film. And one thing I think that's interesting is that let's start with Bon Jovi's Wanted Dead or Alive, you guys. All right, so one thing to consider in the film, and I'm not gonna criticize the film too much. I mean, it is a little bit anachronistic. Is that I changed my hat because I was uncomfortable with my new hat. I need to break it in a little bit more. Y'all like my Iceman hat, but I went back to the old school. Is that one of the songs that they play in the film is the Extreme song. How's the Extreme song go? What's the famous Extreme song from 1991? It's from the album I can't say it. Porno Graffiti. I only remember that because it came out around the same time as the Ice-T. Remember the Ice-T album Body Count with the song C.O.P. Killa in it? That was hugely controversial. If you remember that, that was a big deal, especially if you were like 10 or 11 years old at the time, because the album starts off with, if these words offend you, and then he says all the 4-letter words, and then he goes into the song C.O.P. Killa, and that was, if you're 10 or 11, that was awesome. My best friend had that album. He had the CD, and he also at the time got the Extreme album Porno Graffiti But that album has that beautiful song on it, More Than Words. That's what it's called. Thank you. Yeah, More Than Words. Anyway, that's in the film, and I thought that was weird to use that in the film because that's not an 80s power ballad. It's not, first of all, it's not a power ballad. It's also, I mean, look, there's such a huge difference between 80s music and 90s music. And look, yeah, I mean, it's like just because I'm doing the stream doesn't mean, I'm an 80s music guy. I am. I love, 80s music and I love these songs, but I love music. So I love music across boundaries and across areas. And we can also criticize things behind the music and the driving force of some of this music, and at the same time, like the music. So, for instance, it's like when McGowan talks about 60s music and the Mamas and the Papas and Laurel Canyon and all that. Yeah, we can criticize the music and where it comes from and cultural creation, but you don't think McGowan, liked the Doors? I mean, the book is called, it's a takeoff of the Doors, one of the Doors, not a B-side album, but what album was that? And it's, Weird Scenes Inside the Gold Mine, which is from the song, what is that? When the Music's Over? Yeah. So anyway, let's start off by talking about Bon Jovi's Wanted Dead or Alive. And yes, this is like the ultimate, boomer 80s, corporate rock. But I will say this, go back and watch the original performance of Bon Jovi. Well, it's John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora playing Wanted Dead or Alive at it's not MTV, I think it's the Grammys performance. And it truly is amazing. I mean, it really is great. And the reason it's great is because, number one, it's unexpected. So what I would this is a weird comparison, but what I would kind of compare that performance to is when Norm, remember when Norm, our Norm McD, did the roast, right? The roast of, who was the roast of? Was it the roast of Bob Saget? Yeah, it was Bob Saget's roast. And they told him, anybody who's a Norm fan knows this, they told him, like, there are no boundaries. Like, be as wild as you want. And Norm, his response, and he writes this in his book, let's see, what's his book called? Based on a true story, right? Not a memoir. In his book, he talks about how, well, what do you mean there are there are clearly boundaries, especially in comedy. The point is that there are boundaries because there have to be boundaries in order for you to go past the boundaries or to push the envelope. And so what he did was, instead of do the normal, like, gratuitous roasting, which everyone did, and he was like kind of uncomfortable with it, he said he would do the opposite. He would push the boundaries by pushing the boundaries of what they found acceptable in that paradigm. So he told like 40s and 50s jokes, right? Things that were so clean, they were so ridiculous that they literally, after that, they questioned his sanity. They thought, is this guy insane? Does he have dementia? And he was like, no, it was funny stuff, and I just wanted to do the opposite. And that is like, that is funny. The fact that he did that is funny. And this is kind of like that musically, in the sense that at the time in the 80s, all of the performances, especially like live and, awards performances, were so big and so bombastic and so 80s. That was part of the, American 80s, part of our our major export. We talked about that with High Concept, the Don Simpson biography, that, stadium filling, big money, big 80s capitalism, military-esque rock and roll. You hit a snare drum and it like resounds throughout the stadium, right? Well, they did the opposite and played like, a down, like a sort of, it starts off quiet, acoustic duet, right? It's two guys with guitars. And now look, I'm not saying this is like revolutionary or anything. I'm just saying that it's interesting in the in the context of that performance because it was unexpected, right? And what it did was, shouts out to my sis out there. What it did was it jump started you remember MTV did like a million of the what do you call it? Unplugged. Remember the Unplugged series, which ran for years and years. If you weren't alive then, maybe you don't know about that, or maybe you just know about like Nirvana with acoustic guitars or whatever. But it was like a huge thing. They're bands, and then they do an unplugged set, and it's supposed to show their musical abilities and whatever. But that started because of that performance, because there was a rock group and they played an acoustic, just one song, not a whole set. But it really is good. And look, even if those two dudes, Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora, even if they didn't write the song, even if it was handed to them by, I don't know, Tavistock or something, they do play the song, right? They sing the song and they're playing, and they obviously it really is charismatic. It's electric to watch. It's visceral. It's really good. Their singing and their playing is amazing, especially for playing live. And so let's talk about the lyrics a little bit to Wanted Dead or Alive, because that song really captures the aesthetic of the 80s big lyrics, big hair metal band, because, hold on, let me just find it in here in the stack of lyrics, because it is about being outside the norm, and of course that became the norm. What they say is, I cannot find these lyrics, y'all. Sorry, I've got so many like damn notes here. There's Whitesnake, there's Poison, there's Def Leppard. Here we go. All right, here we go. Sorry. Who would have thought you could like take a million notes on damn Bon Jovi? All right, so it's called Wanted Dead or Alive. Now, I always get this one confused with their soundtrack to Young Guns 2, which Young Guns and Young Guns 2, by the way, I like those movies. But remember, they did the soundtrack to Young Guns 2, and speaking of Tom Coombe, I'm sure everybody knows this, but did you know that Tom Coombe is an extra in Young Guns? Charles Sheen's in there. Of course, Emilio S. Estevez, Seifer Cutherland, Michael. But Tom Coombe is an extra in there. Anyway, Wanted Dead or Alive. It goes, it's all the same. Only the names will change every day. It seems like we're wasting away. Another place where the faces are so cold I drive all night just to get back home. Then he says, here's the chorus, I'm a cowboy. On a steel horse I ride. I'm wanted dead or alive. Wanted dead or alive. He says, sometimes I sleep. Yeah, shouts out to my sis for this mic here. Best sister in the world. Sometimes I sleep. Sometimes it's not for days. The people I meet always go their separate ways. Sometimes you tell the day by the bottle that you drink. And times when you're alone, well, all you do is think. I'm a cowboy on a steel horse I ride. I'm wanted dead or alive. Oh, I ride. Then he says, and I walk these streets, a loaded 6-string on my back. I play for keeps because I might not take it back. I've been everywhere. Still, I'm standing tall. I've seen a million faces and I rocked them all because I'm a cowboy, right? And I'm wanted dead or alive. Now, let's talk about why this is a clever song. First of all, yeah, obviously the music and the melody and the structure of the song and the tempo is amazing, but the lyrics are great. Why? Because again, this captures the 80s rock star aesthetic, because first of all, think about the clothes. Think about the costume that all these guys wore. Axl, Vince Neil, Motley Crue wore it, right? Let's see, Bon Jovi. They all wore cowboy boots, like sort of Jim Morrison-esque leather. In the film, he's wearing these leather chaps, which is like, cowboy-esque. At least it comes from that. Sometimes they actually, of course, Poison, when they sang Every Rose Has Its Thorn, Bret Michaels is wearing a cowboy hat. So in other words, they're in California and they think of themselves as like they're outlaws, right? They're outside the system. They're bad boys or whatever, and they're dangerous. I'd say the most actual dangerous version of this sort of aesthetic. It's not really an archetype, but a type would be Guns N' Roses. Used to Love Her, and then of course One in a Million. Now, One in a Million we can't even cover because it's because the lyrics are too much. But it is obviously controversial. All you have to do is look them up. And Used to Love Her, I remember when I was a kid and I saw on the news after I got the tape Lies. My friend Brad gave me the tape Lies for my birthday in second grade. He actually gave me Appetite for Destruction, and I was like, dude, you already gave me this last year. And he was like, damn, hold on. And the next day he came back and he had the tape for Lies. And Lies was cool because on the inside of the tape, it's got a picture that's awesome, especially if you're in second grade. And of course, we would read it and it's got all the cuss words in it, and it was awesome. Well, the acoustic side of Lies, has that song Used to Love Her. And I remember I was at my grandmother's house and I was watching the news, and it came on and said that somebody in probably California had KILT, had killed his girlfriend because he heard the song Used to Love Her and he followed the instructions and the directions in the song and did that. And even as a second grader, I thought, what a dumbass. Why would he do that? It's just a song. But I don't know. Maybe, and you know what? Maybe that was just an excuse. Maybe it wasn't even true or whatever. But it does tell you the, I guess the sort of the, I don't know. It's like there's mayhem. There is a kind of mayhem in some of this music. Now, obviously not in this song. It's a pretty clean song. But let's look at some of the other lyrics. He says, when he says it's all the same, only the names will change, and every day it seems we're wasting away. Another place where the faces are so cold, I drive all night just to get back home in the first verse. Well, remember back to our seafarer/wanderer Anglo-Saxon stream? It's the same. What he's saying here is essentially the same, right? It's the Ubi sunt motif. Where are those who have gone before, right? There's a sense of mutability. We have to live life now. Everyone that has ever been is gone, and they will be gone. And even when I'm back home, I wish to be on the road or on the sea, pillaging or whatever, or playing music and this. And when I'm doing that, I wish I only do it because I'm going to bring it back home. And it's really, like he says here, only the names have changed because, of course, they're a band and they're playing different venues and, they meet all these people. But it also means that, like, there's nothing that is constant in terms of what he sees as meaning in life. Everything is changeable, and he's trying to hold on to something. And what he really holds on to, in a way, is his own, I don't know, not his modus operandi, but his method of trying to make it through life, which is a sense of, like, trying to embrace change. Nothing remains the same for him, right? But one thing that's interesting is the vehicle, right? He says, on a steel horse I ride. Now that's pretty clever because it's obviously a take or a pun on the cowboy 19th century, the iron horse, right, with the train. And the steel horse is both the tour bus, right, and the motorcycle. Like in all these videos, you see the rock star or the singer, riding his motorcycle. You see it like in Whitesnake. You see it. I mean, yeah, it can be a fast car or whatever. Of course, in the Whitesnake video, you have the girl, what's her name? The famous model and the music video girl on the car. But in this, it's like, this is like what he sees as his freedom. But notice that, like, he's not free, right? He sings out, he cries out. That's why he's singing. He's sort of crying out, trying to exclaim who he is, but it's in an empty world. Yes, he is surrounded by millions of people, like in the stadium or wherever, but he is also always on the road, and the names change, and he's always alone. He's always by himself. And that's interesting because in the film Rock of Ages, of course, it's called Rock of Ages, and it's a take on the fact that, that God is our rock. He's our rock and our salvation. He is a shelter from the storm, right? But in the movie and in the rock world, the rock, it's obviously, rock and roll, but it's also supposed to be that, like, there's this weird sense of the fact that, like, the fans see the singer as their rock and the music rocks, and that you're sort of told through the lyrics to look to yourself for inspiration in a lot of ways, which is why I think they probably could have done more with that if they had a deeper movie. They sort of accomplish it ironically, they accomplish it in Footloose. Remember in Footloose, the whole point is, again, it's that trope of like, the teens just want to, everybody just wants to have fun. They just want to be themselves. They want to, like they'd say now, they want to live their best life or whatever. But the boomers who run the town won't let them have fun because they live in this, puritanical Baptist world or whatever of, not being able to do anything and having too many rules. Now, everybody can relate to that in a sense because, when you're younger, it's like there are too many rules and nobody lets you do anything. But as you get older, you're like, there's a purpose to a lot of these. Of course, a lot of the rules are bullshit, but there is a purpose to some of these rules, right? When there are no rules, we see what happens like now, or when the rules only enforce the depravity. But in Footloose, remember, they won't let him sing and dance. And at the end of the film, remember, like Kevin Bacon takes it to John Lithgow. He takes him a copy of Psalms. Remember, and he reads Psalms, and he says, he reads Psalms, and what does he read? Isaiah, and it talks about dancing and singing to the Lord. And this is like, he appeals to him, and he says, this is like, we want to do this. Now, they don't literally do that after they're given permission, but they do sing and dance. And I think that plays into, in Rock of Ages, that sort of happens, except for it turns out that the good people are worse than the bad, only confirming the jaded people's impression of society and the world. But the paradox, I guess, is that the title shows you that there is a rock. Now, of course, it comes from, there's that hymn, but it shows you that there is something that, that you can rely on that never changes, right? And that you can even be, it doesn't do this in the movie, but you can even be like Stacey Jacks, right? And have everything in the world, but you won't have anything. There's a scene where he's like in the Hollywood Hills and he goes to his home and he's like, he's shredding on guitar. He's doing this guitar solo, but he's outside in his, palatial mansion, which looks just like the Chateau Marmont. But Chateau Marmont is a haven for, OD and death and solitude or isolation and loneliness, right? That's Hollywood. Sorry, I know I'm not trying to be didactic. I'm just trying to analyze this in a sense that I think is a little bit more than just looking at, the normie version of the lyrics, right? So, what else? I thought it was interesting. I thought of Heat, the movie Heat. He says, remember Wayne Grow? I got a message. I am a cowboy looking for anything heavy. And I say that because we are actually going to do a Michael Mann Heat stream soon. We're going to analyze the film Heat after I just got a copy of the book Heat 2, written by Michael Mann, which just came out. Just got a copy of that book. Did you know that Michael Mann has a novel, a follow-up to the great 1995 film Heat? I am a cowboy looking for anything heavy. Let's see, what else? The song started the Unplugged craze. It continued into Young Guns 2 in 1990, Blaze of Glory. Oh, yeah, okay, so when he says in the verse, a lot of these songs always have something about walking these streets. But he says, when he walked these streets, a loaded six string on my back. I thought that was interesting. That was pretty clever because notice the sort of double metaphor, or at least the variation of a cliche, right? So instead of the cowboys loaded revolver, right? His 6-shooter, where he's playing for keeps, Doc Holliday style. He's got a loaded 6-string. It's loaded because it's tuned, it's ready to go. The rock star himself is loaded, even though Bon Jovi, I think, is a pretty tame band. I'm not even going to go into some of the deeper conspiracy things about John Bon Jovi, but I've heard quite a lot of weird things that you may know about, which are probably not surprising. Remember, he's also an actor. Remember, John Bon Jovi, and he actually was pretty good. He was actually a supporting cast member in, what's that movie? Remember U-571? Matthew McConaughey. Yo, listen, I was looking in the psychosphere and I decided we needed to find the Enigma machine on a submarine. I'm sorry, that's a terrible impression. I'll leave that one to JD. But U-571, pretty good movie with Matthew McConaughey around 2000. But yeah, John Bon Jovi's in that. Of course, it's got Harvey Keitel. And he's like 5'2" or something, isn't he? Which is interesting because Tom Coombs is also a short little quick guy. Man, I love Bon Jovi when I was like, 7? Like 6 through 8, I loved Bon Jovi. I thought that they were awesome because I loved seeing their videos from New Jersey. I didn't like Slippery When Wet. That was before my time, really. I mean, I had it, but Bon Jovi, New Jersey was like, I thought that was like awesome when I was 6 years old. 6 to about 8. Guns N' Roses was, of course, my and all my friends' favorite. And it was like Guns N' Roses and then Aerosmith, right? Aerosmith Pump, What It Takes, and then like, I guess, Bon Jovi. And then, of course, the 90s came along and changed everything, and that was awesome. And, but yeah, my friend gave me a Bon Jovi New Jersey t-shirt I had when I was 8. And let's see. My note says, this says, would be nothing. Okay, loaded the bullets. He's intoxicated. Loaded as in like, I guess a monkey on his back. The constant drug addiction that these rock stars had. Of course, that was real with Guns. I've got a Guns N' Roses biography here written by, what's his name? The guy who did, it's written by Danny Sugarman, of all people. Danny Sugarman is the co-writer of No One Here Gets Out Alive. Just another side note. I know I'm doing a lot of tangents here, but I got a lot of like, music and rock books and stuff, I guess, especially from when I was a teenager. And Jerry Hopkins wrote this sort of definitive biography. And it was co-written by Danny Sugarman because Danny Sugarman was, that movie Almost Famous? I hate that movie. Sorry if you love that movie, but Almost Famous is about, I guess, Cameron Crowe as a young Rolling Stone writer. But Danny Sugarman was like a real life but cool version of that because he was like 13 when he first went to see the Doors, and then like, I don't know, somehow he started hanging out backstage, and then Jim like kind of like, he was like his protege or something. But anyway, then when Jim died in 71, Pamela Corson and Danny Sugarman like became lovers, I guess. They were both drug addicts together. And then this is crazy that Danny Sugarman went on to either marry or have a long-term relationship with, what's her name? Fawn. I forget her last name, but she was Oliver North's secretary and had to testify at the Iran-Contra affair hearings, which is crazy, right? Anyway, Danny Sugarman co-wrote. He also wrote a book called. This is interesting. You may never have heard of this, but this is a book called Wonderland Avenue, and this is about. It's called Tales of Glamour and Excess, and that deals with Wonderland Avenue, which JD's talked about this. Remember the Wonderland murders that occurred, which is like, that's one of the scenes in Boogie Nights. and it involved that big time like Lebanese dealer who was connected with all sorts of people higher up the food chain. And Danny Sugarman was living on Wonderland at the time, and that book recounts some of those events. And he also was certainly connected with higher ups, and then died young of probably not mysterious circumstances, but of course he was. I think he might have OD'd or had had a heart attack or something. Anyway, why did I bring that up? Because let's see. Because he wrote the Guns N' Roses biography, which deals with a lot of those things. Let's see. The songs would be nothing if they. Yeah, the songs would be nothing if they didn't have lyrics with style and substance. That's true. If the band didn't have musical ability, and a serious stage presence and voice and a vision or charisma, none of this would have worked. So it's not as simple as, and I'm not saying anybody said it was, as like, oh, we get some actors who can't play instruments and they go on, and that did happen, of course. Like look at the Monkees or any of these people. But with these, with touring bands, it's slightly different. And I think that they had all these things, but I just don't believe the whole oh, we came from nothing and we were poor and we came from Nowheresville, New Jersey, and we just made it big. That does happen, but I'm not sure I believe it with some of these guys. Okay, let's look at, you guys liking this? Thank y'all for being here. I appreciate you. We're going to be doing the, let's see, we're going to be doing the Wuthering Heights stream either tomorrow night or the next night. I'm not sure when. And there's a lot I got to say about Wuthering Heights and 19th century Gothic, Byronic anti-heroes. I mean, I'm taking a little bit more time with the book and rereading it again because of the sort of Gnostic allegory in the book. So I reread it and now I'm rereading it again and making some notes on the fact that I'm seeing something completely different in it. So we'll go over that soon. Also, we're gonna do a fun Steven Seagal sort of marathon analysis of some of those great movies that some people have requested. We'll also, I think, soon be doing an analysis of The Giver, some dystopian literature, because I've had a few requests for that book over the last 6 months, and I recently got one from one of my homeboys. So I think I'll be doing that one. That should be good. And any other requests you have, please put them in the comments, put them in the chat, or drop me a fat super chat and sponsor a stream, y'all. I would appreciate it very much. Let's see. Okay, let's look at Poison's Every Rose Has Its Thorn real quick. So, yeah, so the parts of the story of this, it says, let's see, Poison frontman Bret Michaels received his broken heart late one night in Dallas during the band's tour in support of their debut album, 1987's Look What the Cat Dragged In. It's a terrible title, right? But Michael's relationship, Michael's relationship, I wrote over my notes again, led to Poison's biggest hit of their career, Every Rose Has Its Thorn. Following their gig in Dallas, Michaels and his bandmate, CeCe DeVille, crazy character. Bobby Dahl and Ricky Rocket on drums. Oh my gosh. Retreated to a seedy motel for the evening. It was there that an exhausted and lonesome Michaels determined that at 3 a.m. call to the girlfriend, an exotic dancer, Natch, with whom he shared an apartment in Hollywood, would be just the thing to lift his spirits. But things didn't go quite as planned. She answered the phone, but she sounded a little odd, said Michaels. Immediately, she gave me that "I'm really sleepy" line, which was not something she would normally say. And then I heard it, the whispering in the background. It was obviously a guy's voice. Now, a female voice, that I could have lived with, you know what I'm saying. Hell, I may even welcomed it. But another guy, it broke my heart. Okay. Of course, remember he had that show called, as Norm Macdonald said about it, it's called, of course, it's named after the Poison song, Rock of Love. No, that wasn't a song. So yeah, but anyway, it's called Rock of Love. Devastated to learn that his girl was not the faithful sort, Michaels grabbed an acoustic guitar and some dirty clothes and headed to the motel's laundry room. While his stage gear spun in the washing machine, the now Lone Ranger strummed some cowboy chords and emptied his broken heart into a song. Bullshit, dude. That is stupid. Yeah. Bret Michaels is in there doing his laundry on tour with Poison, and records a song in the laundry room. Okay, maybe, but okay. Let's see. I wrote dumbass explanation. This sounds like it was a ghostwriter. Yeah, I wrote about Under the Silver Lake. Anyway, it became their first #1 hit. But the song is it's a great song because the lyrics are sort of esoteric enough, and they have a symbolism that anyone can sort of read meaning into. Of course, the meaning of the song is that, everything beautiful has its kind of the thing that can hurt you, right? That love is a dangerous thing because, love can hurt you. But what's interesting is that, the symbol of the rose is that, it's almost a Beauty and the Beast image, right? Remember they used that in Beauty and the Beast, the petals of the rose falling, and we talked about that with T.S. Eliot and William Carlos Williams, right? The multifoliate rose. The rose is obviously the Rosicrucian symbol. It's a metaphysical Renaissance symbol of occultism, but it's also a symbol of it serves the same function in a way as the peeling the layers of the onion, right? In Ibsen's Peer Gynt at the end of the play, when he's peeling the onion, getting to the core of what it means to be a human, or what it means to live. And in Every Rose Has Its Thorn, he's simply saying that he realizes that love is a beautiful, delicate, multifoliate thing, but of course it has its defense mechanism, which is the thorn, which pricks you, which is that love, as he says in, what does he say in The Hangover? Love is a motherfucker. Now, that's sort of obviously that's sort of I'm not trying to give a Gnostic take on the meaning of the song. I also don't think it's like some sort of Gnostic allegory, but I do think that it's interesting that this band's hit single has such a poetic richness to it. I think that's probably what helps to convey it, what makes it big. Taking that onto Def Leppard, let's talk about some Def Leppard. Def Leppard is like really the driving force of this movie, Rock of Ages. And I will say about Def Leppard that, they sort of typify the big 80s sound and the big 80s lyrics because they are a rock band with obvious like synthetic elements. I mean, remember the whole thing about the drummer? It's interesting. The drummer's name Phil Collin. The drummer's name is Phil Collin, right? Like Phil Collins. And of course he, lost his arm in that accident. I think it was a bus accident, just like Metallica, right? But what happened was, did I cut out? No, I should be still going. What happened was, in the videos, you can see that he's got the kind of synthesizer synth drums, octagonal, huge stadium sound. You hit the snare drum and right, resounding throughout the stadium. Their albums, like especially what was it? Is it Hysteria? Yeah, Hysteria in 1987, like was not. Of course, the critics didn't receive it very well, and it is what it is, right? Says the boomer watching the concert, but it became hugely popular because, as they said, when they played "Pour Some Sugar on Me," what happened was they said, and I'm sure this is sort of the case, but what they said was that every time they played it, it became huge in like strip clubs, especially in like Florida, especially in the United States, but especially in Florida. And that whenever they said that like women heard the song, especially at Def Leppard concerts, like they inevitably threw their shirts on stage, and I would say one thing about analyzing the song is that it really doesn't it doesn't have a, if we're going to talk about like the literal meaning of the song, it doesn't really work, right? Right? Because like if this is a if this is a sexual song, well, what does it mean? You're pouring sugar on a person? I don't get it. Like it's like grainy, right? It's grainy and like I just don't get that. Unless sugar is, a metaphor for, obviously it's a metaphor for love or I guess it could be, 80s, popular 80s drugs. But literally, like, it doesn't work. So it doesn't really make sense. Also, one thing about Def Leppard is that, come on, get it on, living on a red eye on. It doesn't matter what their lyrics are because, like, it's like they're just sounds. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've never thought about actual lyrics to Def Leppard songs because they just sound like continuous sounds. It's just the melody and the sound of the, it's like onomatopoetic sounds from the singer. What's the other one? In my love, and more, and a photograph, and you love, and a bit of, and everything, right? It's like Bob Dylan, but younger, and like in a stadium in a British rock band, like with a mullet, and that like. I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm saying it's like that's just what it is, right? You don't know me, right? So let's look at actually some of the lyrics of these songs. For instance, let's look at. Let's see. Okay, Armageddon it, right? He says, is Armageddon it the one where he says? He says, it sounds like he says, break. Oh, no, it's pour some sugar on me, right? It sounds like he's saying, break a Bible. It sounds like he's saying that. Is he saying that? Break a bottle. No, break a bottle. It's got to be break a bottle. It's got to be break a bottle. Right? Okay, so break a bottle of sugar. He does say the word saccharine in it, so that's that goes along with the theme, right, of sugar. Photograph has some clever lyrics. I don't want no photograph. I mean, I don't know how to like analyze the lyrics to Def Leppard songs. Cause they're not like, for instance, they're not like the song I Want to Know What Love Is, which is, all right. So this is let's look at this one, you guys. I love that. Like, I like Def Leppard songs. I think they're fun and like, I like the Illuminate Confirm like aspects of their album covers, which are just kind of obvious. Like they've got like, what is it, like triangles with, Illuminate eyes or whatever. And, I just think they're just like, I guess, silly. But I don't really know what else to say. I don't think they're telling the story of, like a photographer at a crime scene. It would be interesting if they were, because that would be very LaVey-esque, or they're not telling like Janie. Have you done? The sound of my gun. Remember that song? Janie's Got a Gun. Aerosmith. I'm not going to talk about that one because if you know anything about that song from Pump, that is a dark song. That is about some creeper business here, and. Okay, so whenever it says Mick Jones here, I always think Mick Jones, the singer of, was it Foreigner? Yeah, Foreigner. I Want to Know What Love Is. Mick Jones, I always think of The Clash, but that's not Mick Jones, is it? So Foreigner, who is, whatever they are, Foreigner did the song I Want to Know What Love Is, and this is in the film Rock of Ages, and it's actually like it is really a good song. And he says here, let's see, he says, I've got to take a little time a little time to think things over. I better read between the lines in case I need it when I'm older. Now that's pretty clever because it's, first of all, it doesn't seem to be rhyming for the sake of rhyme as most song lyrics do. In fact, one of the only things that ties song lyrics to poetry, to poetics, is the fact that they are lyrics, right? That poems were sung on the lyre, right? Lyre. So they become lyrics. But other than that, we're rhyming for the sake of rhyme. He says, this mountain I must climb feels like a world upon my shoulders. Through the clouds, I see love shine, keeps me warm as life grows colder. So this is kind of a mythological image here because it's like Atlas imagery, right? He's saying that he is in the first, not stanza, in the first verse, it reminded me of Sonnet 18, when in eternal lines to time thou growest, because he's talking about I read between the lines is obviously subtext, but it's also the lines of getting older. It's like the lines in your face, right? And the lines of the song. And then in the next verse, he's talking about this mountain I must climb. It's like he becomes Atlas, right? He's holding the world, or the weight of the world, on his shoulders. And that's kind of the opposite of the Rock of Ages image in the title of the film. Of course, Rock of Ages is the title of a Def Leppard song, but I'm not going to look at the lyrics for that. And then let's see. He says, in my life, there's been heartache and pain. I don't know if I can face it again. Can't stop now. I've traveled so far to change this lonely life. It's interesting how there's a variation on the rhyme scheme there, which is pretty good. That sort of, there's unity and variety. And one thing about these songs is, like, when they do something unexpected, they tend to succeed. You would think that they are sort of totally formulaic, that they follow a complete formula, except for the slight variations. He says, got to take a little time to look around me. I've got nowhere left to hide. Looks like love has finally found me. Of course, I wrote not under the rock. He's climbed up and like exposed his personality. If you climb up the mountain, if you climb up the mountain, which is part of any struggle, you expose your travails to the world, having them, bringing them to light as part of the process of this. Which is also kind of the opposite of relying on the actual Rock of Ages, right? And he says, let's see. So the verses are repeated. I want to know what love is. I've seen heartache and pain. One thing that is kind of interesting is that a lot of these lyrics, like, yes, popular songs do this. They repeat, right? Verse, chorus, repeat. But one thing that kind of gets to me is the fact that the movie Rock of Ages and a lot of these lyrics, they have this problem where they have momentum and they're going, and there's like something original, and they're sort of, they don't have to tell a story. And in that sense, they kind of work like lyric poems. They're making, it's impressionistic, but they run out of things to say, or they run out of steam, right? And that's certainly true of, like, I watched, like, the last, 7 movies I've watched did that. They all just keep running out of steam, and certainly Rock of Ages did that. And it's like, keep the momentum going, keep the plot going. You don't have to always have a resolution, but don't just they all keep doing this. I would say, okay, look, we're going to resolve that by doing the Steven Seagal stream, because if there's one thing that Seagal does, it's keep that momentum going, right? You guys ever seen ODG, On Deadly Ground? I got a question for you. What does it take to change a man? Can you change? I can change. Right? That's Steven Seagal. Now, look, I'm not saying that's a paradigm for the great movie, but they do keep their momentum in terms of like, what is the plot? What are we looking for? Is the last quarter of the movie going to be all pointless action? Is the last third of Rock of Ages going to be sort of resolving a conflict that's already been resolved in the first 2/3, and now we're just filling up time? So look, again, I'm not doing movie criticism. We're doing movie analysis, but I would say that one thing that is important to like a successful movie like this is realizing, it doesn't have to be realism, but it has to be a reflection of life, how it is or how it should be, in the sense that like it's ongoing, right? It's unless you are are the movie is completely like a nihilistic, set of predetermined events, and it's just like dominoes knocking down, and there's no point. Which is certainly, that is kind of the point of like, the like Beckett plays, right? Or what else? What's another one like that? Sometimes Coen Brothers films can be like that. We've talked about that. I mean, that's certainly what Burn After Reading is like that. And my point is that music can be like that too. Now that certainly is a statement on the overall sort of impression of definitely the era, right? This sort of emptiness, this sort of empty, greed is good, engineered 80s world of valueless propaganda. But there has to be more than that. So anyway, that is about all I got, you guys. Thank you for letting me ramble here about big 80s lyrics and music. Let me see if we got any super chats here. Let's see. Shouts out to all my homies, and thank y'all for being here tonight. I really appreciate you. Yo, shouts out to Devin. Thank you so much for always supporting me, homeboy. He said, this is a fun one tonight, Holmes. Sent $5. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you. John sends $10 for Red Bull and Cigs. Really appreciate you. That means a lot to me. Thank you so much. Let's see. Got another one. $5 from Alan. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you always for supporting me. Thank you so much. Shouts out to our homegirl out there, Slow Boy, Whiteboard Kristen, who has been like just posting, just banger after banger. Thank you for continuously posting those, Kristen. I really appreciate it. Especially the recent. I watch all your posts, but it's especially the recent one about from The Simpsons. That one was good, and that reminded me. I didn't want to put it. I didn't want to spurg schizo post in the replies, but that one that you posted, The Simpsons, reminds me of. Everybody go watch that one, by the way. That reminded me of the American Dad episode. Is it called the 1200 or the 200? It's the one where it's a takeoff of Cormac McCarthy's The Road, and it's like the post-apocalypse, end of days. And then there's also the Rapture's Delight episode where it's set in the end times. You should watch both of those. I think you would find those pretty clever. American Dad. So anyway, yes. Thank y'all. Really appreciate you for being here. Shouts out to all of our homies out there. Of course, JD will be in VA this weekend with Based Jim Jatras. Let's see. Shouts out to Dawkin out there, to Jethro, to Jerry, to Mixkey, to Blocksky, to TGF, to BHM, and to all of our homeboys out there and homegirls. Really appreciate you. Thank you, Jason. Thank you also for supporting me last time in the last stream. I don't think I got to it, so thank you so much for supporting me, and appreciate you. I'll be back later, either tomorrow night or in a couple nights, for some more straight up literature analysis. So thank y'all for being here. Appreciate you. Peace.